How is it going, YouTube and all you Wooper Club fans? Fruit Taco here to bring you a feature match from Week 4 of the WCL's 11th season. This match is between SteveChuck and his Waterdeep Wobbuffets, and Sazbo and his Boulder Boldores. SteveChuck is looking to come back after his sound loss to myself in Week 3, so let's see if he's able to solidify his position as a top team, or if Sazbo will use him as a stepping stone to push himself into contention. Looking at the matchup, this looks like a fun one, guys. The Boldores lose out a little bit on base speeds, but with an extra mon over base 100 and 3 Pokemon with speed doubling abilities in Hawlucha, Excadrill, and Drifblim, as well as a Trek Room setting Diancie that's only undersped by Trapinch, Sazbo comes out on top when it comes to speed and options in this matchup. The Wobbuffets have the scarier Pokemon in this matchup in my opinion, though, with Terrakion and Thundurus going to town, especially behind a screen or two. Sazbo has threats of his own, most notably Hawlucha and Excadrill, but other powerful performers on the Boldores like Blacephalon and Rillaboom have strong counters to them this week. I'm expecting a hard-hitting battle here, with both sides looking to break one or two defensive pieces to let them quickly snowball. But let's see how the coaches plan for the match. The Wobbuffets are bringing Heatran, Tapu Bulu, Thundurus Therian, Crobat, Milotic, and even the 20-point Trapinch gets to make its debut here. Got a lot of bulk here, with both Crobat and Milotic running max defense, and Heatran running max special defense. Heatran comfortably walls Blacephalon, Crobat walls Rillaboom hard, and with the Marvel Scale boost, Milotic can take hits from Excadrill and Hawlucha pretty well. We've then got Max Attack, Choice Scarf Tapu Bulu, with the speed investment to outspeed Max Speed Heliolisk and Adamant Hawlucha. Woodhammers look absolutely devastating against basically everything, and Megahorn and Stone Edge let it smack the rest too. After Bulu breaks some walls, Max Special Attack Thundurus can clean up the rest, although, notably, it's running no speed investment this week. For the Pokemon that Thundurus outspeeds, Excadrill is really the only one you might see speed investment on, and with Sand Rush, doesn't even really need it, so it's a pretty smart but risky move by SteveChuck. Lastly, we've got the Choice Band Trapinch with First Impression, designed to come in, trap a weakened opponent with Arena Trap, and then pick up a pretty easy KO. Note that First Impression actually has a higher priority than Grassy Glide in Terrain, making it a check even to Rillaboom, who could easily KO it otherwise. Looking at the Boldores, we've got Excadrill, Diancie, Tapu Fini, Rillaboom, Hippowdon, and Cryogonal. Adamant Excadrill is the win condition here, with Swords Dance and Sand Rush to sweep late game. Focus Sash is here for safer setup and a lifeline if it runs into a surprise item keeping something alive. Choice Scarf Cryogonal is here to support Excadrill, keeping away rocks to preserve the sash and using Freeze Dry to nail the flying types in Milotic, which could otherwise stand in Excadrill's way. Trick Room Diancie can also pressure the flyers and maybe let Hippowdon get a heavy slam off on Tapu Bulu. Tapu Fini with Taunt shuts down Milotic, and Rillaboom comes to smack Milotic as well, but also hits the Terrakion and Starmie. Lastly, we have the Sand Setter Hippowdon with a Smooth Rock for maximum sand and Heavy Slam to catch Bulu off guard. Seems like Sazbo has studied the matchup pretty well, but will he be able to break through the walls that the Wobbuffets are bringing this week? Let's find out. Here we are with the two teams looking at each other, Bulu looking absolutely amazing here, with Woodhammer actually OHKOing everything except for Rillaboom, who can absolutely chunk with Megahorn if it gets the chance. Thundurus is also great here, with coverage for everything except Rillaboom as well. The other side, if Excadrill gets a chance to set up, it can do a lot of work, being able to two-shot the flying types and Milotic after a Swords Dance. Excadrill can't risk taking a Scald though, so Rillaboom and Fini are going to be important in wearing that Milotic down. Looks like it's going to be a battle of positioning here, as both teams have key walls to keep alive and key walls to break before they can send in their sweepers to close out the game. Let's see who's going to come out on top here. Thundurus is out for the Wobbuffets, which would be a great matchup for a lead Hippowdon setting up early sand and rocks. Pretty good against everything else too, except this Cryogonal, which I really like, because, I mean, Cryogonal has free Freeze Dry into everything except Heatran here for super effective damage. Heatran is going to come in for that Thundurus, though, and is going to take that Freeze Dry just fine. Cryogonal is going to switch out here into the Hippowdon as Steve gets some free rocks up. Expecting either rocks or a ground move, Steve is going to go into Milotic as Sazbo makes a great read and clicks Toxic, which will land before Milotic's Flame Orb has a chance to activate. This will still activate Marvel Scale, but Toxic is going to limit how much walling Milotic can do before it needs to switch out. Toxic also would have really hampered a reasonable Bulu switch in there from Steve, so that was just a great play from Sazbo. Cryogonal is going to come out to take the obvious water move here, which is going to be a flip turn back into the Heatran. Cryogonal is going to spin away the rocks to preserve Excadrill's Sash, as Magma Storm is going to come out, hit, and KO it. And with that KO, we're going to see Excadrill come in now. Heatran switches into Milotic as Excadrill goes for high horsepower but misses. That is unfortunate. Feeny switches in for Excadrill to easily eat Milotic's Scald, with Chip between Sand and Toxic really starting to add up on this Milotic. As Feeny was brought to counter Milotic, and it does just that with Taunt preventing the recover here and more Chip continuing to accrue. Ice Beam from Feeny will bring Milotic to just 26% before it flip turns out into a very scary Tapu Bulu. Feeny is going to switch into Rillaboom to take a grass move, but SteveChuck makes a great read and clicks Mega Horn, but it misses. Rillaboom's HP investment would have saved it from a potential OHKO, but the Mega Horn damage would have meant that it couldn't have switched into a Woodhammer afterwards, as well as put it in range of Trapinch's first impression. It's a really rough miss. I wonder how this is going to influence the rest of the match. Steve switches into Crobat, who is okay eating a knockoff or grass move, but Sazbo switches into Hippowdon to take another Mega Horn. Sazbo doubles into the Excadrill here as Crobat goes for Toxic, which of course doesn't affect it. You know, maybe Sazbo predicted the Toxic, which, you know, to be fair, was not unlikely, but this switch was really dangerous as U-turn also was likely and could have come out and then broken the Sash before bringing in something threatening like Thundurus. Excadrill takes the opportunity to set up a Swords Dance as Crobat roosts, maybe expecting an attack. Milotic comes in as a sack here and is going to go down to Sandstorm Chip after an Iron Head. Now Thundurus is going to come in to potentially revenge it, but Sazbo wants to keep his Sash and goes into Diancie, who easily takes a Focus Blast. Volt Switch will bring Diancie to half, and Heatran is going to be out now as Trick Room is going to be set up by the Diancie. Diancie switches into Hippowdon, who easily takes a Flash Cannon. Crobat switches in for the Heatran as Hippowdon goes for a Heavy Slam and Sand runs out here. Hippowdon switches into Tapu Fini as Crobat U-turns into the Thundurus with just one turn of Trick Room left here. Ice Beam's going to do good damage to Thundurus, who hits back with a knockoff as Trick Room ends here. Rillaboom comes in for Fini to take the Volt Switch. And let's see who Steve is going to go into now. It is the Trapinch! Banded First Impression comes out, which Rilla barely lives to set up a Leech Seed instead of going for the KO. Banded Trapinch, of course, has to switch out here into Bulu, and Rillaboom U-turns out into Hippowdon for more Sand. With the fresh Sand up, Sazbo is going to double into Rillaboom as a sack here, and that is going to let in... It's back, the Excadrill, and it still has its Sash. Bulu is in range of an Iron Head, so it switches into Thundurus, who will take one. Thundurus is going to go down to a second Iron Head, though, and that's going to bring in Crobat. Sazbo actually switches out to Diancie here, likely to preserve his Sash again. Crobat's just going to roost up to full. Crobat will U-turn here into Trapinch, who takes a Diamond Storm pretty well, but Diancie does get the Defense Boost. Defense Boost actually puts Diancie out of EQ range, so Trapinch is going to switch into Heatran, and Protect's going to fail. Magma Storm comes out from Heatran and lands. Diancie sets up Trick Room again and takes Trip. Body Press is obvious, so SteveChuck goes to Crobat, who only takes 11%. Another Diamond Storm from Diancie gets another Defense Boost, so U-turn it barely does anything. But now Trapinch is the slow one! At this range, Earthquake KOs Diancie even at +4, and Fini will face the pinch with one turn of Trick Room left. Earthquake does great damage, but Fini lives to set up a Calm Mind. SteveChuck has to let Trapinch go down here to an Ice Beam, but now Bulu is free to absolutely smash something. Feeny switches out to Hippowdon, who gets KO'd but gets to set up the Sand. The crit was pretty nice, but actually was a roll to KO with it anyway. And now that's a full HP Bulu facing down an Excadrill with Focus Sash and Fresh Sand. SteveChuck is going to somehow have to stall out Sand, so he switches into Heatran to eat an Iron Head, but Sazbo clicks Swords Dance. And that's going to be 1 KO for Excadrill. Now it's going to be 2 KOs for Excadrill. And that's going to be 3 KOs to close out the battle. What an excellently played game by Sazbo here. Excadrill had a couple opportunities to go for the sweep along the way, but Sazbo was patient right up until the end when it was a sure thing. Besides the excellent weather management, the biggest thing was getting that Toxic on Milotic, followed by Taunt keeping it low later. Milotic was the Wobbuffets' Excadrill wall, and it just got crippled so fast that it couldn't do that for long. Some great switches and play by SteveChuck as well, but he just couldn't get Bulu in at the right moments to click those massive wood hammers, always having the threat of Sand getting up for a revenging Excadrill. MVP of the match has to go to Excadrill here with 5 KOs and insane pressure throughout the entire match. That result will bring both of these teams, along with my Burbs and the Rockruff, to 2-2, fighting for those Edge playoff spots. Be sure to check out this week's power rankings to see how SteveChuck and Illogic tried to sort all of that out, and also look at any other content from the league's coaches and channels, which you can find in the description. Thanks again to the coaches and to you watching, and I'll see y'all in next week's feature match.